Let's talk about the Fae. By starlight and shadow, in a time before time, long before the rise of kings and cathedrals, when the earth still sang with the voices of gods and stones, there walked a people between the veils, neither mortal nor divine, born of moonlight, mist, and memory. They came riding silver winds from the 4 cities of the north, bearing sacred relics and the secrets of the stars. The Tuatha de Danann, the shining ones, once ruled the Emerald Isles with grace and spellcraft, until humankind rose from the dust and claimed the daylight. Rather than vanish, they slipped beneath the hills, into the hollow mounds, into twilight realms, becoming the Aoshi, the fair folk, the whispering ones. But they were not alone. In deep groves and mystery glens, from Norse hearth fires and German woods, came the Alfar, the Elben, the ancient sprites, some radiant and healing, others tricksters with eyes like coal and riddles sharp as knives. And when the priests came, preaching sin and salvation, they were recast as fallen angels. Those who would not kneel nor burn, banished to the in-between, forever dancing on the edges of the seen and unseen. Others say they were born of the very elements, fire in their eyes, water in their veins, roots in their hair, and winds in their breath. They are the spirits of stone and stream, keepers of the old ways, guardians of the wild. To call them merely myth is to close your ears to the rustle in the hedgerow, to dismiss the chill that runs up your spine in an ancient forest, to ignore the voice that calls your name in dreams. The Fae were not made. They remembered themselves into being, woven from the threads of story, longing, and earth's deep magic. And still they wait in shadows and starlight, in laughter and lilt, for those brave enough to see them and wise enough to ask nothing without offering something in return. Author Sophia.
Welcome back to Miss Kulala's Mystical Musings. Yeah, time is literally escaping me. The kids are out of school. Yes, I will probably be doing more lives than anything, because those are impromptu, and if the kids are running around, the kids are running around. It's the videos that I present to you here. I would rather have, time to edit and make them nice and all of that. It's part of my creative process, and I'm finding that I really, really love it. So here we are, and I am going to do a little bit of week 1 and a little bit of week 2. With working with the Fae. And this is brought to you by my sisters, Amethyst Ascension, Tarot, and Astrology. Her Facebook group is called Divination and Spirituality, and she has been responsible for creating this huge community project that's been going on for a very long time. And this month, it is Astaria Sen Summer, who is hosting the whole month about the Fae. And there's nobody better to do that, because I think she is Fae, really. So I myself, I'm not really very familiar, or am I? When I think about the Fae, honestly, what comes to my mind are nature spirits, But the more that I think about it and the more that I've actually looked into it, I realized that there's so much more than that. And I think that from watching everyone else's videos, that there's so much more than that. You know, it's like they like Courtney from Erie's Witchcraft says, they are interdimensional beings. And you know, I believe that. So, you know, I've had lots of experience with different types of interdimensional beings. You know, and I'm not even going to put a limit on that. There's been dragons. There's been, you know, obviously ghosts or spirits, elementals, aliens, since the time I was an infant, 6 months old. So I've been having lots of experiences throughout my lifetime with interdimensional beings. And in my dreams, of course, I like have a soul family that is, they are interdimensional beings. They're part of, I mean, I have soul family here in this 3D realm, but I also have some on the astral realm, if you know what I'm getting at. Are they guides? Are they, you know, I think that finding the Fae, which is week 1 journaling, that the prompt is hashtag week 1 finding the Fae, really takes on a whole new meaning when you start thinking about it in terms of, you know, who they really are. And they're not just, you know, like fairies, like fairy folk, the small little flying beings that you might think of, you know, like we see in fairy tales, or, you know, they could be the fallen angels, you know. I have had many experiences on the astral plane. I can't always control my journey there, but I go there a lot. And I've been doing that since I was, you know, again, 6 months old. So sometimes even dreams are very lucid, and there's beings. And then the home that I live in, I've talked about this before, I think it's haunted, but in a good way, because when I first moved in here, I cleansed the heck out of it. So anything negative has remained in its place, if you know what I mean. In the very beginning, it was about, you know, you share my home or you leave, but there are certain areas in my home that are portals. There's been so many times that I've awoke in the middle of the night, and you can tell that these interdimensional beings aren't always, you know, people that have passed on. These are different, you know. One that I saw was this very small body woman. She was a girl, and she was floating, and she was like sitting Indian style, with like her legs were crossed, and she's floating, she's levitating. And she has a small body, but a really big head with lots of red hair. And her glasses are down like this. And she's just, you know, floating above me, and just like she's taking notes. And I just like, okay, all right, I see you're passing through. And then there was this other being that was like kind of standing behind her, but in a it was like he was observing, and he was kind of blurry, but he was a tall stick figure, like, you know, almost like you could, you know, like a branch, but with arms and like things on his head. And he was just standing there, and he was a little bit kind of willowy, like I said, like he was, and those two beings were in my room at the same time. One time I was downstairs with my granddaughter, Lola. And I think Lola is a, I don't know if you want to call her a conductor or a magnet for stuff like that. Let's just say a few times that I've slept next to her. One time I woke up and there was this little short man in the living room. And he was probably, I don't know, not even quite 4 foot tall. And he had a long beard and straggly gray hair, and he was real thin. And he was just standing in the living room, just standing there. He wasn't really looking at anything. And then another time I was upstairs in my bedroom here, and she was sleeping upstairs with Grandpa and I, because her mom was out for the evening. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, there was a little girl standing over me looking at her. And she was actually, she might have been maybe a spirit that had passed at one time, because she looked like she might have been Amish. She had the little cap and blonde hair that was, pulled back from her face, in a white gown looking thing. And she was just leaning over me looking at Lola. I see that stuff all the time here. I've showed you guys like stuff that comes through the light. Like anytime there's like any type of an electrical thing, there's stuff that happens there. Communication, I think. So when we talk about the Fae, I feel like it's all very closely related. I had an elemental in my living room, and I say it was elemental because it was just energy. At least that's what I was perceiving, was this ball of energy, and it would move and it would kind of bounce around my living room, project all sorts of love at this ball of energy that I could feel was just like, just wanted to cause havoc. And that's what I was doing. I was just projecting love. And after I projected all sorts of like love and just acceptance, it shrunk. It's like that ball of energy went from, I would say at least like a 3-foot type area where it primarily stayed. Don't get me wrong, it would bounce around the room, but it would be always drawn back to that little area. At one point, it got to where it couldn't leave that area anymore, and it was tiny. It was still there, but it was tiny. Just say that my home and the surrounding area, if all of that can be considered Fae, nature spirits, or just interdimensional beings, they're everywhere around here. They're everywhere. So she has here, the myths and legends about fairy are many and diverse and even contradictory. Only one thing is certain, that nothing is certain. And that was quoted by Brian Froud. And I love that. So Summer asks, how do you define the Fae and what do you already believe about them? I believe that anything is possible as far as the beings, the interdimensional beings. I believe that they are something from, they live in the many realms, they could be alien. They could be, I don't think that they are spirits from, or should I say like a past loved one that might be lingering, because I don't believe in ghosts per se as like an ancestor coming to visit you. I think a ghost is something way different. So, and I think that our ancestors can visit us through our consciousness, and I think they can use certain frequency to communicate with us. So, Fae, I think, are something that are existing like we do. It's just they are not in this physical, but that doesn't mean that they can't pop in and out. I think that I just think that anything is possible, and I'm open to any of it. Yeah. So, I mean, what I already believe is that they're very magical, but I think we're magical. Consider writing with a 3-minute timer anything Fae related that comes to your head and brain dump on your journal pages until that timer goes off. I think that's what I just did with you. So let's check out the week 2 journaling. So if they are approached in honor and friendship, and you prove that you are able to keep your side of any arrangement, strong connections can be formed with fairy wherever you are in the world. And that was Emily Carding. With anything that has some type of a consciousness or can communicate, or that could be affected by anything that I do, again, it deserves as much as respect as you and I. It deserves kindness, understanding. Yeah, I do believe that. So week 2 is about connection with the Fae, either starting it or reworking it, or reaching just a bit farther toward them. Maybe they are even reaching out to you looking for a connection. Try exploring these questions in your journal. How does Fae connection feel different to me than other spiritual connection? That I will have to explore. When have I felt an unseen presence or subtle energy near me? So that I can tell you, oh gosh, that happens a lot here. So there was a time too, and actually Summer was here and experienced it. We had these magnificent little moth-like, they were a flying insect of sorts, and they came from some faraway land, because I remember looking it up, and we only had them that year. And what was so interesting is that's the only time Summer has ever visited, and they were here. I think she even took picture. And they looked like little, what you would think a little fairy might look like. They were white and willowy and almost like a, when you blow on the dandelions after they seed or whatever, and those, but bigger. Have I already had a Fae experience? I'm going to say yes, if you think about it in the aspect of they are, interdimensional. And with the different types of beings that I have witnessed here, I mean, they would probably be described as the Fae, because I don't think they're all just tiny. I think that they could be full size, or even, like human size, or even like maybe even giants. So, yeah. So I looked up a few things, because I think one of the questions that was asked is like, what is the origin of the Fae? Like, where did this whole idea come from, and where did that word come from, and all that. So anyway, I was doing a little research, and so I found Celtic origins of, and I think my sister talked about this, the Tuatha de Danann. So in Irish mythology, the Tuatha de Danann are often seen as the ancient precursors to the Fae. They were a race of divine or semi-divine beings who came to Ireland in ships through a magical mist. After being defeated by the human Milesians, they retreated into the Sidhe, the mounds or hills, becoming the Eoshi, the people of the mounds. Where did they come from? Some myths say that they descended from gods or came from the 4 cities of the north: Philias, Gorius, Marius, and Phineas. Not sure if I said that right, but each a repository of mystical knowledge. These beings were associated with nature, magic, and immortality, and are thought to have evolved into what we call the Fae. Now, there are also Norse and Germanic influences. The Norse had the Alfar, elves, luminous beings that lived in Elfimir and were tied to fertility and ancestral spirits. In Germanic folklore, elves and dwarves were seen as nature spirits, sometimes helpful, sometimes tricksters. Light elves were beautiful and divine, while dark elves and Dálkafar, not sure if I said that right either, lived underground and were more mischievous or malevolent. Over time, these ideas blended into broader European fairy lore. Excuse me. Now there are also Christianized interpretations. So in medieval Christian Europe, the Fae became, quote unquote, the fallen angels. Not evil enough for hell, but too rebellious for heaven. And some believed they were spirits trapped between worlds. This view framed the Fae as tricksters or deceivers, aligning them with demons or damned souls in need of redemption or warning. So, esoteric and occult thought. In Western esotericism and theosophy, the Fae are thought to be elemental spirits or nature devas, which is very interesting because in the Secret Teachings of All Ages, Manly P. Hall does talk about the nature spirits. So, and of course, Manly P. Hall was a big fan of theosophy, which we all know that is because of Helena Blavatsky. So obviously she, has her own idea of the Fae. Non-human intelligences that existed on the etheric or astral plane. He divided them into gnomes, earth, undines, water, sylphs, air, and salamanders. So these beings were considered part of the natural order, deeply entwined with the consciousness of the planet and elemental. Here's another thing that I was just thinking about today. When I was reading the Book of Enoch, it said in the Book of Enoch that the sirens, now the sirens were the mates of the fallen angel. These were the wives of the fallen angels that once the angels were damned, and this is all lore, obviously, but according to Enoch, these wives ended up becoming sirens. Now, if you look up what sirens really were, they were half bird, half woman, not the mermaids, but they were conflated with the mythology of mermaids later on. So, and the sirens, even though people associate mermaids with sirens, they were not the same. They were half bird, half human. And these are what the wives of the fallen became. And depending on who you talk to, they were considered Fae. It's like, my mind is blown when all these things start coming together and you know what I mean? All these little dots are being connected. So modern interpretations, contemporary spiritual paths often see the Fae as interdimensional beings coexisting with us in parallel realms. Yeah. Sometimes guardians of nature, sometimes cosmic tricksters, sometimes echoes of ancestral spirits. Again, because I don't think that those are the same as ghosts, to me, that's extremely plausible. In neo-paganism and witchcraft, working with the Fae often involves respecting boundaries, offering gifts, and maintaining sacred relationships with the land. So I think it is quite necessary that I learn a little bit more about these nature spirits, you know, and actually give them the respect. I think the respect would be to learn more about them through the lens of the Fae. So I am so excited for this. So excited. So just a little bit more. It says, so where did the Fae originated? In truth, they may be deified ancestors, personified forces of nature, echoes of ancient gods, interdimensional consciousness, or simply the living archetypes of mystery, wildness, and wonder. They are as old as the hills and as fluid as the mist. Born from the liminal spaces between night and day, life and death, human and divine. I think it's freaking fabulous. Hopefully I get some good footage to add to this. And because I actually went through and I thought, you know what? I'm going to take some gifts and put them outside because I don't have a little fairy garden or nothing like that. But I have lots of places where they might congregate. So these were found on the property. Does anyone know what these are? But as far as gifts for the Fae, I have, come on, I have this little, I have like a little crown that, like a toy costume jewelry crown that this came off of. So I'm going to put this in there for them somewhere. This was just a little charm. I have like a whole bunch of them. So there's, and an old little shiny key, some tiger's eye, a little ladybug that was gifted to me from one of the daughters of a lady that was at one of the expos I was at. She just, came up and gave it to me, and I've been holding on to it. And yeah, so I'm gonna give it, or let them play with it for a while, or see if they want to do something with it. An earring that I don't have, the mate to. I don't remember what this is, but it came off of a piece of jewelry. And this was a little tiny shell that my granddaughter gave me. So I actually have like lots of stuff like this, but I thought I'd start off with a little bit and just, I don't know, give them something. Yeah, like a little offering. So that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And yeah, and some editing. Thank you for joining me and listening to my rambles, because I don't know anything. I just think anything's possible, and willing to entertain all ideas when it comes to the Fae. But I do know a lot about interdimensional beings, and I do know a lot about spiritual things. So let's see how much of an overlap there is with what I've already experienced, and give it that new perspective. Look at it with fresh eyes, and forget about what I think I know, and just, I don't know, just whatever happens, happens. But look at it from the way Summer looks at it, and just go with it and see what happens, because I haven't done it like that yet. So, yes. And I'm excited. I'm really excited. So thank you for spending this time with me. Okay, so I am going to show you on the CIA.gov for the secret teachings of all ages. Now, Manly P. Hall does talk about the Fae. So if you have a copy of the Secret Teachings of All Ages, it's really interesting what he puts in here about the natural law and the spiritual world, and all about the, nature spirits, and talking about, where some of this comes from. It's just really interesting. And it's a kind of a simplified overview, but I do talk about Paracelsus in my video, and in previous parts of this video. So we're talking about the elements and how he divided them. So yeah, I just find it really interesting. So these are all things that I have had my nose in, so I am familiar with this perspective, put it that way. Now, looking at it from the different perspective is where I would like to go from here, because I am familiar with this already. So that's kind of what I was, getting at. I think I'm going to do a part 2 and do the spreads in there, because I had a little trouble trying to get them to load, trying to get them through Summer Shop or even my sister's shop. I couldn't get them to load. So I did it through my browser, and I was able to get them to load. So then to save them that way. So Summer, if you saw the, why I just kept, I donated once, and then the other times I did it for free, because I kept having to go back and try to get it to download, and I couldn't get it to download. So, technology, yay. So those are conventional gnomes. Yeah, let's see if I can click to enlarge that. Oh, that doesn't really enlarge it, does it? So anyway, but yeah. So yeah, the elements and their inhabitants. It's in that's page 105 of the Secret Teachings of All Ages. So yeah, check it out. What was that? That's that one. A salamander. Yeah, awesome. Let's see what else. So we just saw the gnomes. Yeah. Very, very interesting. The undines, water elements. Yeah. The salamanders, the sylphs. Now, remember what I was talking about, the mermaids? Yeah. Yep. Yeah. All right. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, and I will do a part 2, and I will get that one released ASAP, because I do want to do these spreads. I want to be guided through this. I think it's important to let myself be guided and look at the different perspectives, because I think that it's really important, and I am all for other perspective than my own. You know what I mean? I'm all for that, because I think it's the only way to really get a true understanding, because we can have a narrow view, and our view might not always be the truth. It's part of it, and I think I look at that in everything. I think that it's always part of it, and it might be. I might already have a great understanding, but I love to entertain different perspectives, just to, I don't know, go from there and see. So yeah. Pretty interesting. All right. And thank you so much for joining me, and again, entertaining my thoughts. And I hope that you are enjoying this as much as I am, because there's still so much more, and I'm really excited. Summer, thank you for all of your guidance, and I love you all, and thank you so much for being here with me.